Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the WTF1 podcast, Bahrain Grand Prix edition. We are here for round one of a 23 race season. And what a banger we have just come off the back of. I am still buzzing from yesterday, to be honest. And joining me in the virtual commentary booth, I'm sure two people that are also buzzing. One of them has a brand new house. That WTF1 money really cashing in. It's Mr. Tom Bellingham, of course, with a less interesting background. Tommy, you've got nothing there.
Yeah, I've got nothing and nothing in this room. So I apologize for the potential echo.
Well, yeah, it's fine. You should apologise. And Katy, you haven't changed because I've seen those pillows many times in this podcast. Anything new in your life? Tommy's new house? Have you got a new whip? Have you got your Aston Martin yet that you dream of?
I haven't, no. I'm still saving up for it. In fact, I think I might change because I've seen Pierre Gasly's podium finishing Toro Rosso came on the market. So I might change and save up for that instead.
Really useful bit of equipment that will be, right?
That's what I thought,
pop down to the shops in the Formula One car. Definitely possible. Anyway, let's get into your three-word race reviews. We've got a few for you. Jack.Arnold says, corner cutting confusion. Matthias Vergara, what a race. There wasn't that many rah-rah-rahs. G Delfino 1, track limit sucks. And Alex Heiner 02, so damn close. So, of course, we've got a few there talking about track limits, which is always a fun topic of conversation, isn't it? You always want to come off the back of an amazing race and the first thing you talk about is track limits. And then what a race is pretty nicely summed up. And so damn close it was indeed. Less than 1 second over the line between Verstappen and Hamilton. As I said in IBR, someone's taken a look at my Christmas wish list and it's come true, which is amazing. We'll go on to the track limit stuff soon, but we won't start it off with that. We'll start it with my three-word race review, which is dream come true. Of course. How could it not be? Verstappen versus Hamilton. And it's kind of the mouth-watering prospect we've kind of had teasers of occasionally, but there hasn't been a huge amount of on-track action between Hamilton and Verstappen, but we finally got it. Eventually, it was more of a race of strategy until at the end, Max came pretty strong, but unfortunately fell short. We've got a few questions. Formula 1. That is quite confusing to read out loud. Does Max have the head and maturity to win a championship? He lost the race today just as much as Hamilton won it. I think that's very harsh indeed. Considering the track limits confusion anyway that was clearly going on, maybe a part of that was Max Verstappen not reading the rule book or whatever. But I will go into something that Sam Collins posted on Twitter. He's the F1 tech expert earlier today, kind of trying to dissect exactly what went on. But I think that's harsh. I think Max does have the head of maturity. He chased after Hamilton, should have won the race, but there was, a slight small bit of controversy, I suppose, with the track limits.
Yeah, I'd argue that maybe Max Verstappen is a little bit more mature because he could quite easily have gone for an absolute dive bomb and crashed into Hamilton, taken off his front wing, like I'm sure he probably would have done back in 2017 or something.
Or just driven off and ignored the stewards, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all hindsight, isn't it? Really, with the move, it was so frustrating because, like you say, it was a dream come true to have that battle. We've all been desperate to see Hamilton versus Verstappen, especially with it looking like, or maybe not, Hamilton's maybe at the tail end of his career. And I think Martin Brundle said something brilliant in practice. That was like, we were denied, sadly, the Senna and Schumacher battle. How good would it be for Verstappen and Hamilton to have that battle? And them two going wheel to wheel until the last lap doesn't really get much better. But the fact that Max, I mean, it's controversial. It was one of those things where you're just like, of all the places he could have passed him, it was quite similar to Austria, actually, when the amazing battle he had with Leclerc, and you just thought, of all the places, why did you have to pass in a controversial place that's going to be like a little bit, like back and forth? But one thing that I've not seen many people talk about, and maybe this is the biggest reach ever, is I wonder if Max could have maybe been a bit more ungentlemanly with letting Hamilton through, eased off, let Hamilton be the one that went offline, dirty his tyres, and then maybe cut back behind him and had a run down the main straight again, which, let's be honest, is the kind of thing that the drivers like Alonso or Hamilton might do, because they're always, thinking about that. I was quite surprised that Max pulled over, got his tyres dirty, and then there were a few chances, but he never really had that amazing chance again. Maybe that's something he could have done, but I think it's unfair to say, this comment's almost acting like he dived up the inside and broke his front wing, which he didn't.
Yeah, no doubt in my mind that Max Verstappen will probably be a multiple world champion in his time. But I can see where they're coming from. Like Tommy alluded to in his answer, there have been a few instances with Max where he's been very impulsive with his overtaking instead of maybe thinking it through and, deciding that maybe a few turns away is a better opportunity than right here, right now. We saw it in Turkey, where we obviously had those crazy track conditions, and he ended up actually spinning the car because he tried to go for an overtake. I think it was on Checo. And yeah, he does make mistakes, as most drivers do, unless you're like Lewis Hamilton or whatever. But in the other chance, like, it's better to go for a gap than just to leave it and then spend the whole rest of the time regretting it. So yeah, I think Max will have the maturity to win a championship. But maybe Tommy's right. Maybe he needed to be a little bit more savage and not giving the place back quite as easily, or forcing Hamilton into making an error, which we kind of saw a little bit before he actually did the overtake. Hamilton ran wide, and it's not often we see Hamilton make an error like that, even though literally like 5 seconds ago I just said Hamilton doesn't make mistakes. But I think it was just excellent to see, wasn't it? Like, talking about it, I've got such a huge grin on my face. I just loved it. I wasn't even on the edge of my seat. I was stood like a foot from my telly, yelling at the telly, because it was just excellent racing. And my goodness, if the rest of the season is like this, I am so ready.
Yeah, let's talk about quickly a couple of things I want to say on that. So turn 4, I think Verstappen had to go for there. It wasn't exactly the most ridiculous or audacious move that loads of other drivers haven't done it there. That turn 4 is a very good opportunity to make it work, especially around the outside. We saw overtakes. I mean, Lando did it on the first lap for the second year in a row. He literally does it every single time, and at turn 4 is his favourite place to do it on lap 1. So I don't think it was a ridiculous move from Max. It could have easily worked, and just went a little bit too hot, as you can see, and he slid wide. But yeah, the point on I didn't really think about the point about him actually giving the position back to Hamilton. You're right, because he went offline, let Hamilton back through, and then only a few corners later, he then has that massive moment around the penultimate corner, which a lot of people, including myself, think that was the reason why then he lost that extra edge of performance that he had over Hamilton. Because of course, if you're sliding more, you get more heat into the tires, then it overheats, and then you lose that performance. And Max didn't have a huge amount in hand over Hamilton anyway. He had that small gap, because it was about half a second, maybe 6-7 tenths that he was eking out of Hamilton. A few laps where it was a bit quicker, but overall, by the time he got to the back of Hamilton, he didn't have that massive tyre advantage that he had at the beginning of the stint. So yeah, it's a really good point, because he could have easily just waited a few more corners. The stewards would have allowed that, I'm sure. Just have a little argument, a little, oh no, I don't think I should, blah, blah, blah. A few more corners, let him go maybe round the corner that he made the mistake. He'll then get DRS down the home straight and has a good opportunity into turn 1. So yeah, it's a really good point, because after that, as you say, there was no opportunity for Max to really get through. And I think that was his best opportunity, because, of course, Lewis made that mistake going into the double left-hander of turn 10, I think it was, which allowed Verstappen to get in within DRS. So I can see why Max went for the opportunity, because he thought, look, it's very difficult to overtake in these cars. I have to make it stick now. And Max usually does. But unfortunately for him, just ran a little bit wide, and I'm sure we'll get on to the track limits controversy very shortly. Another question. Tom 927816884 says, should Bahrain become the new season opening race? It produces much better races than Albert Park. I agree. I think Bahrain is actually a really awesome, almost unsung hero of the Formula One calendar. It's a great racetrack. It's got areas where the drivers can make pretty big mistakes. That downhill double left-hander causes all kinds of problems in Formula 2, Formula 1 with the locking up of the front left. But then you also have some amazing straights. You have hard braking zones into turn 1 especially. Turn 4 is a great opportunity to overtake, as we've already mentioned. So in terms of actual racing action, sure, Bahrain should definitely be the opening race, and there are other contenders as well. There are better racetracks than Bahrain on the calendar, but it doesn't come down to that. It comes down to contracts.
It's so funny because in 2010, I think it's 2010 when Bahrain last hosted the opening race.
Horrendous layout.
A horrendous layout, but even still, Bahrain kind of has that, like you say, I think it's an underrated track. It's produced some brilliant racing. The first sector, especially, you get so many switchbacks and it allows the car to run back alongside again, and just a great sequence of corners. And yeah, that when I just remember Bahrain being one of those things like, oh, why Bahrain, why is it taking the place of Albert Park? It's just money. And you feel like this could be like a controversial question, but it seems like everyone now agrees that Albert Park, while there's no doubt the race in Australia got amazing F1 heritage, and there'll probably be some very angry Australians now shouting at us saying you can't get rid of Melbourne as the first race because it's this amazing party atmosphere. And I've not been lucky enough to go, but I know my parents have, and they said, it's such a good celebration and the city does so much for Formula One and it's amazing and it feels like a really amazing venue for the first race, but the race itself is never that great.
And 90% of these people don't enjoy the celebrations because they're not
exactly. Well, it's like Abu Dhabi, right? It's Abu Dhabi. I'm sure people at home, when Abu Dhabi's the finale, is probably sick of hearing, people going, "Oh, well, the facilities are amazing and there's a roller coaster," but it's like we want a good race, and
there's a roller coaster.
Yeah,
that's the argument.
Exactly, but yeah, I don't. Bahrain. Yeah, I think it's, and also let's not forget the fact that we had Austria as the last year as a season opener, and that produced a brilliant race as well. It's a shame, really, because Albert Park did have its moments, but it just hasn't seemed to have delivered for a long time.
I'm somebody on this podcast who I've said before, I really like the Albert Park track. I don't know if maybe that's an unpopular opinion or whatever, but I quite like it. I think it's probably partly because it's normally the first race and it's got all that excitement around it. But in terms of the general racing, I don't think it's the worst track on the calendar by any means. But in terms of Bahrain, that was such a brilliant first race. And even though we'd had pre-season testing there, like literally a few weeks before, we mentioned this when we were talking through the calendar, that there were fears that because we'd had pre-season testing, although it was only 3 days compared to like the normal 6 days or 8 days that we've had in the past, we were thinking, oh goodness, is this race going to be a complete bore fest because all the teams have got the data, like recent data, but like Tommy said, it just proved to be absolutely brilliant. And there are so many different elements to that track that make it so great for a racing spectacle. And at the end of the day, that's what we need. Although roller coasters are cool, we want decent racing.
So what you're saying with the whole testing thing is that if we'd started the season in Barcelona all this time, we would have had an absolute banger at Barcelona.
Probably. To be fair, people might think that Barcelona is actually a better track than what it is currently. If anything that starts as the first race of the season, even Monaco, I might even think that's good if that started off as the.
Are you feeling all right, Matt?
No, I'm not. I'm still on a high from yesterday. But yeah, Albert Park is one of those that I can take or leave it personally. It does have that feel good nature of the fact it's the first race, but apart from that, I'm pretty over it. But as for Bahrain, as you say, Katy, yeah, there was a huge amount of the unknown, which was crazy. The tyres were the things that no teams really had got their head around, because obviously it was only a 3-day test. So, but that is still a huge amount of time. That's 3 full days of running. So you would have thought maybe with practice sessions and whatnot, they would have got their heads around the cars as well as the tyre strategy. But because of the fact that, we had 50-degree track temperatures, and then when the race hit, it was down in the 20s. And then the abrasive nature of the track as well, causing more and more tyre wear. Yeah, it was brilliant. Tommy, 3-word race review.
A 3-word race review is, where's the consistency?
That could technically be
no, it's not 4 words.
I knew you were going to say
I knew that was going to be. I kind of almost picked it deliberately just to get people to bring it up. Yeah, unsurprisingly, a lot of people aren't happy with track limits, and it's a massive shame because we had this amazing, brilliant race that we've just been talking about. I put an Instagram post up after the race, just essentially just what a race, expecting all the comments to be like, wow, what a season opener, this is amazing. And every comment was just angry people being like, track limits are a joke, blah, blah, blah. This was...
social media's full of angry people.
I know, right?
No.
But to be fair, I can sympathise a little bit. It's a shame that people can't just enjoy that race because it was brilliant. But, we saw videos circling the internet where Hamilton was running wide at turn 4. I think the famous one being where he goes wide 29 times and everyone's like, oh my God, like disqualify him from the whole championship. And then, of course, Verstappen did his move of all places at turn 4. And I agree that, and we'll go into this and explain because I think a lot of people are confused by it. I think that I know the Hamilton thing was legal and Max shouldn't have been allowed to overtake off the track. My problem is why the FIA make these rules so pointlessly complicated when, we've talked about just recently, Drive to Survive has been the number one thing on Netflix, and you're bringing all these new fans in, and then you're just making the sport pointlessly confusing and people don't understand. And it's clearly for a lot of people ruined what should have been a brilliant race between Hamilton and Verstappen, and we should be just lauding it and how good it is. But this track limits controversy has just taken over, and I don't understand why they've kind of changed the rules between qualifying and the race, and how hard is it just to police that if you go off the track, you're not allowed to go off the track and that's it. It's just silly to me. It's
crazy. It is absolutely crazy. And I'm of the same opinion about the fact that, why is it not just one rule for the entire weekend? The only thing that I can think of that would, cause us to do that is a lack of resource, lack of people being able to actually watch that particular corner. But then it says, I think in a document, that 2 people were analysing that corner for the entire race.
I mean, if someone can stick the highlights on Twitter about 10 minutes after the race, I'm sure a steward can do it.
Oh, exactly. No, but that's what I mean. But what else is there? Where's the reason apart from trying to, you either allow it or you don't? And I mentioned Sam Collins, the F1 tech expert. He basically, I'll put it in a nutshell because he goes into quite a lot of detail on his social media about what happened. So essentially, it seems as though the stewards got a little bit annoyed with how much Hamilton was extending. So a lot of drivers, Charles Leclerc, Tsunoda, et cetera, were all extending to the limit of 4 wheels off the track, but still within the remits of the curb. Hamilton was basically going off to Narnia and coming back on the track. And so you can understand that there, when you actually look at some of the onboards, he is going very wide indeed. But then why is that not clamped down so that it's literally, as we've seen in the past, the stewards have had this in place for other places. For example, I think, is it the penultimate corner at Austria? They kind of clamped down on that. And, it's just instant deletion. And they had that in place for qualifying. Why is it not the fact that they can just say, right, you can't extend turn 4. It looks bad anyway. Like, just if you're going to clamp down on track limits last year, why are you not doing it consistently for this year? Because they've done it in qualifying. They can do it. Why are they not forcing it? And I don't understand, because then you also have, you have millions of people watching at home. They don't have the rule book in front of them, and they see Verstappen do exactly what everyone else is doing, but overtaken Hamilton using it. But the problem is they're saying it doesn't matter in terms of lap time unless you're Hamilton and you're taking too much of the mick. But if it's in a sporting sense of trying to overtake somebody and you go off the track, then that's illegal. So you can see why that causes so much confusion with fans, because you think, well, if you're allowed to do it on your own, why are you not allowed to do it when you're overtaking somebody? When you're in the heat of battle, surely there's a little bit of lenience there, but there isn't. So it's so confusing, and it needs to be clamped down and just streamlined, not just for the drivers, but for the fans at home. Formula One is a difficult sport to understand. Try explain a newcomer that maybe has just come off the back of Drive to Survive, which is amazing. I love the fact new fans are joining this. To then go, well, why is Verstappen not allowed to do that when Hamilton's been basically taking the outer layout for half the race?
Yeah, it's so ridiculous, isn't it? That they need to. My only hope is that this is actually the part where they do clamp down, and for people that maybe don't know and are confused, because that's the thing. it's not made clear enough at the start of the race, and it shouldn't be this way anyway, because you watch qualifying or even practice. We put up a graphic that I think Bottas got 8 laps deleted during the free practice sessions. So that's now in every fan's head going, right, you're not allowed to go off turn 4. So it's understandable, even though it is legal and technically allowed because they changed it. Why they changed it is so just stupid to me. That fans have every right to just be annoyed by it, because it's just overshadowed like this brilliant battle. And it's kind of almost ironic that arguably the fact that Red Bull, maybe again this is another big reach, but the fact that Red Bull complained about Hamilton, and then almost again the FIA with their inconsistency and like they're not forceful enough with these things. Like they kind of changed their mind in it halfway through the race and were like, oh, now suddenly you've got to stop doing it. But then arguably maybe if Verstappen, if that had just been the rules and Verstappen had done that move and they hadn't complained earlier and Hamilton hadn't stopped doing it, maybe Red Bull would have been in a place to say, well, no, we're going to argue it. And maybe, the win would have counted, who knows? But the problem with these things is always the fact that it should be black and white. Just if you're off the track, it's not allowed. Stay on the track. Why is it so difficult?
It's such a shame, isn't it? Like we said, that we had this amazing race, amazing battle, and yet we feel the need to come on here and have a rant about how the FIA are managing things, something which we've already had discussions about on this podcast before. Obviously, I'm not suggesting we replace the FIA by any means, but it is such a shade of grey. Like Christian Horner called it exactly that. After FP1, they decided to start deleting track times for exceeding track limits. We did a bingo card on social media and we predicted that turn 4 track limits was going to be an issue this weekend. And we're not even employed by the FIA. We're just fans talking about Formula One, but we knew it would be an issue. While the FIA race director Michael Massey instructed that Verstappen gave the place back, it just shouldn't even have to be an issue. It's just unnecessarily overcomplicated. The drivers were told that track limits would not be monitored during the race, and then all of a sudden it suddenly changed midway through a race. Like, drivers have enough on their minds when they're competing in a Grand Prix than to think, oh, well, you can't do this anymore because it's suddenly been changed. And like, it's just so daft. I don't get why there isn't just one rule, stick to the rule. It's something we'll talk about a little bit later as to like how this could actually be resolved, but it's just getting to the point now where it's just leading to me and you guys having a rant on the podcast and overshadowing what was a brilliant race.
Yeah, well, we'll take away this grey cloud very shortly as we're talking about this grey area. But, it needs to be, it's just so simple. You're just not allowed to extend. If you do it a certain amount of times, you get a penalty. Like, that's it. That is the Formula One game's done it. Why can't Formula One in real life?
Literally about to say that. Yeah, literally. Like if you do that, if you did what Hamilton did on the F1 game, you'd be disqualified.
Exactly. And it's silly. It is silly because, as I say, then Verstappen does an overtake there, and then people go, why is he not allowed to do that? Because it's two completely separate rules.
Did you, and then even just to throw even more controversy into the mix, did you see Esteban Ocon shared a video on his Instagram of him racing Tsunoda saying, oh, what a brilliant battle. And he goes around the outside, overtakes him off the track, and he's alongside. But then we get into that ridiculous situation, which again, as Katy alluded to, we're always ranting about it on the podcast. It's the meme of like in the midfield, the stewards are asleep, but as soon as it happens with the front runners that actually care about, they're like, oh yeah, we should probably do something because a lot of people are watching this. Whereas Ocon and Tsunoda, it's fine, just do it. Like, it doesn't matter. It's just silly. It's just ridiculous.
Yep, sort it out, please, stewards. Let's go through some questions very quickly. I think we've covered a lot of it, but we'll go through them anyway. H Britain 123 says, "Do you think the right call was made about track limits all weekend, and do you think the ruling for the Max on Lewis overtake was fair?" So we're going to go with a no for the right call about track limits. Keep it consistent. And do you think the ruling for the Max on Lewis overtake was fair? Yes, I do, because that's what the ruling should be. Is if you go off the track and overtake somebody, it's illegal. Are we in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes and yes. Good. Smoggy Bulmer says, "Should track limits now be forever considered to be the white lines? Instant penalties for even going slightly over the line. The ambiguity between different circuits and even different corners is fast becoming laughable." Yes, it should be consistent. It should be, if you extend 3 times, 5 times, whatever, there should be a certain amount of times. Of course, it might change depending on what the track is and the corners is. But as long as there's a set, right, this weekend, they can't go fast around, I don't know, they can't cut Eau Rouge 3 times. They wouldn't really cut it for that one. Any corner that you don't cut X amount of times, penalty. Are we in agreement with that, guys?
Yeah. It shouldn't be. It doesn't need to be Rainbow Road where if you go off, you're falling into oblivion. But three times or something.
Someone's been playing Mario Kart.
3 times is it's easy enough, isn't it, to just watch someone and go. 3 times you're like, okay, you're clearly doing this on purpose or taking the mick now.
Yeah.
So
and it gives the audience something tangible to be able to kind of measure as well, with the fact that, okay,
clear rules.
Hamilton, you could even have a little graphic. Oh, Hamilton's extended there twice. If he does it one more time, he gets a 3-second time penalty. Boom, easy.
And then the drivers have nothing to complain about because
FIA,
they know.
take notes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Formula One is one of the only sports that embraces technology as much as it does. And I think that we should have something in place. If it's not possible for people to be able to monitor it, we should have something like sensors fitted to the car, for example.
Lucas de Grassi, they've had like sensors on.
Yeah,
tracks.
they did it for.
Yeah.
I don't know why that just disappeared.
Yeah.
I guess it's just a really difficult thing to maintain and to fit. I'm not sure. But Lucas de Grassi, who was previously in Formula One, also in Formula E, he has suggested online that we should put sensors in the car floor and the magnetic stripe at the track limits. If the sensor is activated, you reduce normal power for an X amount of time. For example, 50 horsepower for 10 seconds.
It's an iRacing slow down penalty.
Yeah.
Literally.
I don't agree with that. Personally, I think that almost becomes a little bit dangerous if you start slowing down.
Well, this is what I thought. Power. I was like, what happens if you're on a track and then the car in front of you just starts to slow? Like, that's obviously not going to be too safe. But I think in terms of maybe having the sensors and then, you cross the line X amount of times, then that's something that the FIA are made aware of. But I'm not sure about the idea of actually slowing cars down, but he's put no need for race directors' subjective opinion as his argument for that. But it's something that I think needs to be sorted.
Indeed it does. We interrupt this WTF1 podcast for a very quick chat about our sponsor for this episode, LinkedIn Talent Solutions. If you have a business, listen closely. 2021 is looking up, which means there should be plenty of new opportunities for you to grow your business. Whether you're shifting business hours or hiring more remote employees, one thing that remains unchanged is the importance of having the right people on your team. When you're ready to make that next hire, LinkedIn Jobs can help by matching your role with qualified candidates so that you can find the right person quickly. LinkedIn is an active community of professionals with more than 30 million members in the UK. Getting started is easy, and their new features can help you find qualified candidates quickly. When your business is ready to make that next hire, find the right person with LinkedIn Jobs. And now you can post a job for free. Just visit linkedin.com/WTF1. Again, that's linkedin.com/WTF1 to post a job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Right, back to the podcast. Final question on the matter before we get back to happiness. Prader Doug says, should have Max just ignored the call from the engineers and just overrun the expected penalty that he would have received? Now, this is what I also thought, and I think that's what Max said on his team radio, was, look, just let me go and I can make the 5 seconds work. It's not a set thing though, is it, that that he would have got a 5-second penalty. So I understand that, that's probably what a lot of people thought. You just drive, you've got fresh tyres. You might be able to extend that gap to 5 seconds over 3 laps or however long was left. But with the stewards on the phone to Red Bull saying, change the position, I don't know whether the stewards would have just gone, oh, here's 5 seconds.
No, because then you're getting into a ridiculous situation where drivers might as well just shortcut. Sebastian Vettel, like say you get a 10-second corner cut penalty, Sebastian Vettel just might be, he started last, he'd just be like, well, I'm going to take the Bahrain outer circuit on lap 1, get a minute lead and win the race. And then
Johnny Herbert, turn 1 at Bahrain in the
exactly. Alonso, think of Abu Dhabi 2010. If Alonso just gone, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm just going to straight line the chicane, get past Petrov. They'll give me a 5-second penalty, and I'll win the championship.
He basically tried that in his last race in Abu Dhabi, didn't he? He was corner cutting everywhere to try and get a point.
But I think if Max had done that and won the race by 6 seconds, I don't think the FIA would have given him a 5-second penalty. They would have made it 10 seconds, or just enough to make sure. It's not literally you cut the corner and get a slam dunk 5-second penalty. So if that was the case, you'd end up in this ridiculous situation where people are essentially taking joker laps to get past people, which is not how Formula One should be.
We all massively agree and disagree with the penalties that the stewards and the FIA hand out to drivers. Like, it's just inevitable. Nobody's ever going to go, actually, that is 100% deserved penalty for this reason. But as soon as you start questioning the stewards and rebelling against what they're telling you to do, you're in dangerous grounds. And I would not like to be a driver that starts telling Michael Massey to basically get lost. I'm going to do what I want to do and I'm going to win this race, and you can slap a 5 or 10 second penalty on my time later. Like, just the sheer act of disobeying the FIA like that, I think would probably be a much harsher penalty than a 5 or 10 second after the race. But obviously I'm not a steward, I don't know, but that's just what I would imagine. If you disobey a direct call from, the people above, I can't imagine they're going to be like, oh yeah, well, you completely wrote off the advice that we gave you, but we're only going to give you a 5-second penalty and you still won the race. But yeah, I don't know. Do you guys agree?
They'd be made an example of, wouldn't they?
Yeah,
they wouldn't, especially with, and I like that. I would rather it be that way, where Verstappen is told to let Hamilton back through, then we deal with it on the track, than Verstappen driving off into the distance, then getting a 10-second penalty, and it doesn't matter. At least we then have a battle on track. The stewards are trying to help in that way, so I agree with them in this instance that that's the way that it should be done. And I think they're not allowed to. They can argue, but they're not allowed to disobey. When it's done, it's done. Moving on. Right, happiness again. Katy, 3-word race review.
Great battles everywhere, which is basically alluding to the fact that obviously we had great battles at the front with Verstappen and Hamilton, but also midfield as well. And you just look up at the TV and there seemed to be another overtake going on, which obviously we're all for as racing fans. But yeah, I thought that the amount of racing on track between people, like we had the Sainz, Alonso and Vettel battling, which was really cool. We saw some Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris overtaking going on. So just generally brilliant stuff. And hopefully it will continue on through the season.
If you're wondering, just during this podcast, why Tommy will just kind of freeze occasionally, it's not because he's bored or he's kind of doesn't bother moving his face. It's the fact that he's tethering off his phone. So I apologize if there's a couple of moments where Tommy just freezes. I guarantee when I ask you for final thoughts, you'll just disappear off into the distance. But yeah, there was so many great battles, weren't there? One person that I mentioned in Internet Special Reactions was Vettel. As much as he didn't have a very good race, crashing into Ocon and an end result, I actually like the fight that he put up on those mediums at the beginning. He was kind of left as a bit of a sitting duck. He had a great start as well. I think he was up to 14th after the first couple of laps, and I felt like the strategy with Aston Martin risking it with the one stop wasn't really the way to go. It wasn't an attacking strategy, and Stroll had a good enough car underneath him to be challenging the tail end of the points. So for me, Vettel, he showed some fight, which I really liked. Another person that did was Alonso. He looked like he'd never left, and he was.
Told you.
Shut up. He was. He was on good form. Ocon had a poor weekend, and we didn't really get to see a good comparison between the two because Ocon was always out of place after qualifying and whatnot. And of course, some of that was down to a certain spinner in turn one in Q1, but definitely. there's some awesome midfield battles. You had Leclerc versus Norris. That was an awesome battle into turn 4 where Norris did extend as well. So it's a good job he didn't overtake Leclerc in that particular instance. Otherwise, there'd be loads of raging people online.
It's fine. It's the midfield. It doesn't. The stewards wouldn't have noticed.
Well, for P4, I don't know if would you call that
true.
midfield? Yeah, I think it's close up. The stewards could just about see what was happening in 4th. But yeah, and whilst we're on the topic of Lando, the first few laps for him, especially side by side with Danny Rick, and really for me, throwing down a marker as, look, mate, I know you're a multiple race winner here, but this is my team, and okay, you outqualified me, but I thought it was a huge statement of intent from Lando, and I was incredibly impressed with his performance as well, because he did outpace Danny Rick for most of the race. Of course, Danny Rick is just joining McLaren, and we need to give him time to get used to the braking, for example. They were saying that he's actually earlier on the brakes than Lando, and he's trying to work out, the new power unit, etc. But for me, I thought Danny Rick was going to beat Lando from race 1, to be honest. Maybe not comprehensively, but over the season, I thought Danny Rick was going to, put Lando to shame a little bit, just purely because I think Danny Rick's one of the best drivers on the grid. But Lando's come out firing, and I'm solidly impressed.
Yeah, me too. I was extremely surprised, to be honest, that Lando seemed to. I know, Ricciardo's new into that team and everything, but I think I won't be alone in saying that I did think Ricciardo might just absolutely annihilate him. And Lando's one of those drivers where maybe the future world champion tag has kind of left him a little bit. Don't want to have his army on my case, but you do, mate. They're here. But he's one of those drivers where came into Formula One and he was up there with Charles Leclerc and George Russell in this future world champion guaranteed, and then kind of he's been good and solid and had some really good races as well, like his podium, but almost more memorable for the jokey side of it. And he said himself, I want to be taken more seriously on track. And then when he's there waving to Carlos Sainz in practice, he kind of like, okay, is like is this gonna, you need to be on it if you're going to be doing this. But clearly it works for him, because I mean I could not believe how much he kind of just was just so good and so comprehensively beat Ricciardo. And the fact that at the start as well, I was like, oh God, here it goes. McLaren have made all this effort to make them like all friends and play the triangle together and be all happy. And then they're going to like obliterate each other in the first race and crash into each other and start hating each other. But they got their elbows out. It was clean. And just what a brilliant performance. And the midfield, like Katy said, was just brilliant. Like, if we weren't treated enough to Verstappen versus Hamilton, the fact that all these storylines like Sainz racing his hero Alonso, you had Vettel and Alonso, which was a proper throwback, even though unfortunately it was for 10th or something, maybe not even that, and Lando and Charles, who are obviously the Twitch crew. So it was just a brilliant race.
I was super impressed with Lando. We're all hyping Lando up on this. But there was a lot of heart in mouth moments, especially at the start of the Grand Prix, when I was thinking, oh no, I can just see it now. Norris and Ricciardo are going to come together, and you can just imagine the social media storm when that happens. But fortunately, they kept it clean, but that was very dicey. And I'm sure both of those drivers were having a great time, as was, I'm sure, Vettel and Alonso fighting each other. We've mentioned it before on the podcast, these drivers, although I'm sure they'd love to be up front, leading the race and winning races and stuff like that, it's in their DNA to love to have these battles with other drivers on track, and especially someone like Alonso and Vettel, who have both got so much respect on and off the track that that you can fight with each other, and nobody's going to pull a rogue move and a stupid move or whatever, and that's just amazing to see. And Alonso, as much as I've mentioned on the podcast before, I think that Ocon is going to beat Alonso this year. That was my big prediction. And I'm well aware of the sacrifice that happens if I lose that prediction. I don't want to talk about it because I'm a bit worried. I'm not going to lie.
Remind everyone, just in case they've forgotten.
So I have to go into the middle of London and shout at the top of my lungs something like Alonso is the best driver ever or something like that. I don't know. I'm trying not to think about it, to be honest. But
it's all right. Matt will be with you shouting, sorry, Yuki Tsunoda when he beats Gasly, so it's fine.
I can't wait.
God, I completely forgot I even said that.
Nice one. But I was mega impressed with Alonso, especially in that qualifying. It was super. But anyway, that's enough of me being positive about Alonso.
Was yours the other way around, Tommy? Was yours the other way around? Was it if
I said Alonso? Yeah, I'd have to say sorry, Esteban in the middle of London. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. I completely.
I'm feeling confident.
I'm feeling confident about mine. I think Tsunoda had a really good. He was driver of the day. Had a great race, but Gasly was in a good position until he literally drove into the back of Ricciardo's rear tyre. Actually, speaking of Yuki, we've got a question. Flacca Pinto. Oh no, next one. Before that, let's do the Yuki one first. Flacca Pinto says, not a real question, okay, but can we talk about Yuki a little bit, please? An amazing race, first race in Formula One, and already in the points. Yeah, it was a great race from Tsunoda, and to be honest, he wasn't even that mad. He was happy, but he wasn't over the moon with the fact he scored, his debut points and stuff. Clearly shows he's got a fire within him that he wants to do better, continually improve, and he's not just going to settle for a lowly tail end scoring in the points. So, and his personality is amazing, and he's got a certain fire when he's driving, and people don't act the way he thinks that they should. He's straight on the radio, swearing and blinded. It's brilliant. I absolutely love it, and he's got a great personality with the media as well. And people asking, where'd you like to finish today? And he's like P1. Yeah, things like that, and then his laugh is just infectious. It's just brilliant. But yeah, Tsunoda, he deserved driver of the day. I think Perez was a close second, but you expect that from a Red Bull driver to be able to come through the field, and especially from Perez.
Yeah, I feel like everyone joined my Yuki Tsunoda fan club this weekend. I think he.
Oh, is it your fan club? Is it? Okay.
Yeah. I think he did it like he covered himself in a lot of glory, didn't he? I mean, what I really liked about him as well is exactly what you alluded to there, that, and all the great drivers do this, that everyone was there like P9, what a brilliant drive, but he knows, especially when he banged it in P2, and after me joking in the podcast last week about the championship battle was going to be between Verstappen and Tsunoda, and then after Q1 I had about 1,000 messages going, okay, how are you doing? The fact that he knows deep down, even though it's only his first race, that 9th in that AlphaTauri, which is looking brilliant. Like that AlphaTauri looks so good, and you mentioned Gasly. He could have been fighting maybe even Lando for 4th. Like the car looked that good, and his qualifying was unbelievable. And yeah, the fact that he just was not happy. He was kind of like his team radio at the end of the race as well. He was kind of like, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I messed up the start." He knows he could have done better, so he's not willing to just accept. Like he's not. It's a bit almost like a bit of a patronizing thing to say, like, oh, he's not in it just to make up the numbers, but he really showed that by just saying, I know I can do better. And I think there's been a few clips finally gone online, which you can understand because we're focused on the battle between the front, but he had an absolutely ridiculous battle with Stroll in the last laps where they were swapping positions. And I've never seen a rookie so confident on the brakes. I saw a lot of people compare it to Daniel Ricciardo when he was at Red Bull, where he'd just come from so far back, like about 6 car lengths. And I think they did show one during the race. And I know Alonso was energy saving, but it was like the calmest dive bomb I've ever seen, where he came on Alonso and it was like 7 car lengths back and just went up the inside. And you're like, he made that look so easy. But yeah, it's brilliant.
I've just written for this on my sheet, insane racer, love him. So there we go. I think I can't remember the time.
Insane racer, love him.
Love him.
Moving on.
I need to explain. But yeah, the AlphaTauri has got such huge potential, and especially with us going to Imola, which, you know, is a track that both AlphaTauris are quite familiar with. They do a lot of testing there, so very exciting. But yeah, like you said, I can't remember a rookie that has come into the sport and just been so aggressive and like brilliant with their racing and so confident behind the wheel, but then also been so well received by fans, because, you know, although loads of people probably know him from F2, and like we joke about, you know, Tommy founded the fan club way back when, and so he's somebody that's been on his radar for a long time. But for a lot of new F1 fans, we put a piece out this morning on the website basically saying that he was overtaking Alonso, which was his dad's favorite racer, and this kind of stuff, which is amazing. Great attitude to have. But all the people in the comments were like, never heard of this kid until this weekend, and he's absolutely brilliant. Like, can't wait to see more of him this year. So it's really refreshing to have a rookie come into the sport that's actually really adored and got a lot of people excited to see what he can potentially bring in the next few years in F1.
Absolutely. Quick question. Vamsy_Madhav says, what are the other midfield teams that can catch McLaren in the next races? Very difficult to say, because I feel like it will to and fro like it did last year, where certain teams will come out firing. Of course, AlphaTauri, I think, looking very strong indeed. You'd like to think there's more from Aston Martin if they can actually get a weekend together. And, well, you know, it's difficult. Alpine, I was, you know, pleasantly surprised with Alonso's pace before he retired. So I think there's definitely chances. I don't think McLaren are as far ahead as the midfield. Of course, you've got Ferrari as well, with Leclerc just mixing it in P5. Sainz had a relatively okay race, said he wasn't really risking anything, which was a very strange thing to say, that he's kind of just bedding himself into the team before he starts making risks, which is interesting as he dive bombs up the inside of Stroll in the double-handed left-hander at turn 10. But I think it's going to change. I think Leclerc's obviously outperforming that car. I thought he was going to drop like a stone at the start of that race because he looked really slow, but then he managed to get it together when he got off of the soft tyres. So it's exciting. I think the midfield is going to be really interesting to watch. And, you know, they're going to snag some podiums here and there as well. But my point, going back to my point about McLaren, I don't think they're as far ahead as the other midfield teams as we all kind of thought. You know, there was this conversation as maybe they're going to be on the, you know, on the sort of coattails of Red Bull and Mercedes, but they're clear gaps still, especially in the race. And that fight for third place in the constructors is going to be very exciting. Yeah,
I think we had a quick chat, didn't we, on Friday after practice, and we were like, I think we might be apologizing on the podcast about saying that, you know, there's absolutely no way that McLaren are going to be up there because FP2, where Lando was up there, it really did look like they might even be, you know, challenging Red Bull and Mercedes, which would have been crazy. But yeah, they did drop back a little bit, a bit of a, I guess, reality check. But I think AlphaTauri know that they kind of they did mess up, I guess. They could have got a lot more points from that race. I think AlphaTauri, the car's looking really strong. And that's the thing with the midfield battle, is you can't make these mistakes because they could be pivotal. We saw Racing Point last year. I think it's fair to say they should have been third. McLaren just somehow finished third, despite, I think, from almost just being like consistent. And these races, I feel like it is going to just change in the midfield all the time, which is, I mean, we love to see it, don't we?
We do. I think it's good that McLaren have remained sort of in a similar place to what they were last year. This was their 6th consecutive double points finish, which is good. But yeah, in terms of teams that arrived in Bahrain, I can't imagine Alpine are going to be too happy. I can't imagine Aston Martin are going to be too happy with the performance. AlphaTauri, like you say, looked really promising in practice and in quali, and then Gasly just completely ruined his race, you know, during the safety car. And same for Tsunoda, he sort of fell back, and although he made up positions towards the end of the race, there was so much potential there that sort of it seemed to go to waste. But Ferrari kind of quite surprised, to be honest. I think we all thought that they were going to be sort of maybe just hanging around just on the outskirts of the top 10. But another double points finish for them, which was their first since Turkey, which obviously was when Seb ended up on the podium and Leclerc let it all go in literally the last few turns. But I'm sure he doesn't want to be reminded of that because that was a bit of a nightmare.
He is an avid watcher of the podcast, I'm sure.
Yeah, as from what I've heard, yeah.
Of course.
Okay, all right. So moving on now, let's get into the first of the season. Tommy, are you going to play the jingle? Is that still happening this year? Are you just going to put it in, or
I'll put it in post? I'll pretend I'm playing the jingle. You ready?
Okay, and now it's time for WTF1.
I don't think I've ever heard the jingle.
Oh.
Wow, Katy, you don't watch your own podcast. Unbelievable. Right, let's keep this short and sweet. ABCDF1 time. Let's do this. Let's start with Lewis Hamilton. A star. Cool.
A star.
Moving on.
Easy.
A star.
Katy? Yeah, good. All right, good. Bottas. I'm going to give him a B.
Yeah, me too. B. I was
B.
actually, yeah. I was surprised at maybe a bit of maybe over the top Bottas slander personally, because I feel like he was, I guess, maybe a bit underwhelming.
It was used as a scapegoat, wasn't he, really?
Yeah.
With Mercedes and the strategy.
And it was very much brought up like, oh, he was 16 seconds behind, and he had that very long pit stop, which would have cost him a bit of time. But, if Hamilton's getting an A star and say you ignore Bottas's pit stop, which could have put him ahead of Max and helped Hamilton even more, which I know he thinks, and I still don't believe it, but I guess you have to believe it in your head that he is a world championship contender and he's there to win the championship. You can argue that's exactly what he's there for, to pick up the points, be solid, and that's exactly what he did.
Well, imagine turning up to work and not thinking you can do a good job, Tommy. God, unbelievable. Yeah, that would be quite difficult. It's impressive for Bottas, the fact he hasn't cracked yet. And maybe there is a part of him that believes that, he'd need a bit of luck. I think the Rosberg story probably gives him a little bit of hope that maybe one day in 2074, when Hamilton is still in the sport, that maybe he'll be able to beat
has 10 retirements in the year.
yeah, exactly. Verstappen.
Oh, Katy, what's your Bottas? What's your Bottas?
Sorry, Katy.
Oh, yeah, my Bottas was also B. I think he was unlucky with his 10-second pit stop, but apart from that, it was a fairly average race, wasn't it?
It was indeed. Verstappen, A.
A.
Okay, lovely, easy. Perez, A.
I went for B just because he probably should have got through in qualifying and it put him on the back foot.
Ooh.
I've gone for A because I think it was more Red Bull's fault that Perez didn't get through than it was Perez's fault. And the fact that he made it through. The field was obviously excellent, making up 15 places, but he's in a good car. So, got to keep that in mind.
Yeah, it's a borderline A. Of course, we don't go into pluses and minuses here because otherwise it'd be boring and we'd all be able to settle on our own little decimal points and all that.
90%.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought it was a solid drive from Perez, especially, the mentality of I'm out the race, then starting from the pit lane and then being able to get through. Of course, we have seen Alex Albon do similar, and I'm pretty sure we gave him a B or maybe an A. I'm not sure. I think we probably gave him an A. But Perez is still getting used to the car. He says every single lap he turns, he's getting more used to it. And he was only about 0.3 off Verstappen in qualifying and getting knocked out. And as Katy says, I think that was definitely more Red Bull's fault, just purely from the fact of don't risk it. He's clearly in the danger zone. Just pop him on a set of softs.
They were really caught out, weren't they, by the fact that the midfield were a lot closer because. I know the narrative.
Track evolution was enormous, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I know the narrative was, Alex Albon part 2, here we go, the Red Bull seat is cursed, all that after qualifying. But was Max like 7th or something after in Q2? Because he almost, not almost, but he was, it's not exactly like he absolutely smashed it and Perez was 2 seconds off him. So he was unlucky, but yeah.
So you're happy with an A then, Tommy? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not going to argue an A. I'd have given him a B, but it's fine.
Tough. You're overridden. Whatever. Overthrown. Norris, A.
A. What a drive. Very impressive.
Yeah, I've also gone for an A. I'm getting concerned, guys. We're agreeing far too early.
No, we're getting further down the field. This is where it'll all go out the window. Ricardo, I'm going to give him. It's between a B and a C, to be honest. I'm going to go with a B.
I went for C. I don't know if that's too harsh for him in a new team, but
yeah, that's what I thought.
He's so difficult, isn't it? Because you do have to give him the benefit of the doubt. He's in a new car, but then at the same time, he's Daniel Ricciardo, and he is such a highly rated driver.
No, I change it. I'm going to go with a C. Yeah, it wasn't good enough from Danny Rick, I don't think.
Well, I went with B, and I'm going to stick with B, even though it's going to get overall to a C. But I thought he had a great quali ahead of Lando, getting the first blood, if you like, between the two of them. But then come the race, just wasn't as impressive as I think all of us were quite expecting. Obviously, they had the first beginning battle between Lando and Daniel, but he fell back. And towards the end of the race, he almost lost out to Carlos in a Ferrari. So not ideal.
I'm changing it to B. I'm changing it to B because I think McLaren screwed him a little bit with the pit stop because he came in a little bit later and Alonso got through on him and he lost quite a bit of track position because he was with Norris and then came in a lap or maybe 2 laps later and then I think it's probably a lap later than Norris, but I think Norris was late as well with the pit stop. Either way.
And it was so tight in the midfield.
It was so tight.
Oh, actually, okay, fair enough. I will go for B as well because I just remembered that he pitted because he had the second pit stop, which you can argue that's tough luck. But because that pack is so tight, I think it lost him a lot more positions.
Yeah, it lost him a couple at the very least.
Yeah.
Okay, so B for Ricardo. Charles Leclerc, A.
A. What a qualifying again. That guy is just unreal.
Yeah, he's a solid one lap masterclass and race pace as well is getting there for sure. Don't know what happened in this first stint because it was dreadful. How slow he was and it was quite ridiculous. But maybe that's just the soft tires on the Ferrari.
I know people like that. Was it A for you? Sorry, Katy, as well.
It was, yeah.
Yeah. Well, agreement again. But the thing
A for agreement.
A for agreement. The thing with I know people like the Q2 tire rule that I'm still not 100% convinced on. That they have to start on those tires because it's a shame really because Leclerc it just screws you for doing well in qualifying. Like, do you know what I mean? Like Leclerc put in an amazing effort and you just knew he was going to be a sitting duck. And it was exciting for a couple of laps where he got ahead of Bottas and there was a moment where I think he had Verstappen, Hamilton and Leclerc 3 wide going into turn 1. It was like, that is pretty cool. Like 3 who I'd consider the best 3 drivers in Formula 1, just going side by side through turn 1. Yeah. But the guy, we called it, didn't we? Leclerc just somehow doing miracles in the car, and 4th was just so far ahead of what I expected.
And of course, 5th in the race. So solid A for Leclerc, almost A star in my opinion. But maybe if he'd got 4th, it would have been an A star in that Ferrari. But Carlos Sainz, he had a bit more of a mediocre, steady race. Of course, I mentioned that contact he had with Stroll at turn 10, and it wasn't massively setting, the world alight. I'm probably gonna. He had a mediocre qualifying as well. Like he looked quite close with Leclerc, but then just didn't get it together in his final run in Q3. So I'm probably going to give him. I mean, I'm judging this on Ricardo, similar kind of thing. You're expecting quite big things with Sainz. I'm going to go with a C.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, I went with a B.
I thought I knew you would have gone for a B.
Why?
I don't know. I just feel like you're a little bit lenient.
It's been really similar, hasn't it? Where we're all actually quite on the same wavelength, but it is that middle ground where, for me, Carlos, I wrote like C/B in my notes, but I think it would be a C just because he is a highly rated driver, and maybe it's just a little bit of an underwhelming debut. And I'm not a fan of drivers that are just like, oh, I'll take it easy. Obviously, there's a limit. Certain people who maybe went a bit too hot early on, but yeah.
Yep.
Well, I'm going to stick with my B. I think it was a good, solid first race for him. If we're using the same sort of attitude we had at Ricciardo, he's still getting used to it. For both Ferraris to finish in the points, we know is quite a rarity now, although it's a different car to what we had last year. But I thought that it was just a fairly solid, good first race. But I'll be voted down to a C. It's fine.
Yeah, I say the same attitude with Ricardo. Of course, we gave Ricardo a B, but the thing was he kind of got screwed with strategy. I didn't really see that with Sainz as such.
No.
I think it was more just lack of pace. So, yeah, I think from what we expect from Sainz, it is close to a B, but it's not enough for me to give it a B, to be honest. So, moving on, Sebastian Vettel.
with that horrible feeling where you're just like, why can't we give a really bad performance an E without getting cancelled? But
yeah,
it's an E because he was absolutely like, yeah. I know he ignored double waved yellows and
said he thought someone had locked up. It's like,
yeah,
I'm not sure about that one, my friend.
The most damning thing was Katy's, and my wife Katy. She's a big Sebastian Vettel fan, and she just, I think after Vettel went into Ocon, she just was like, that's not Sebastian Vettel. I just can't get my head around that that's Sebastian Vettel. It's so weird, isn't it?
And his team radio was confusing. Apparently some people were saying it was before that incident and it actually wasn't.
Oh, did they do a Netflix?
I think so. I think because it doesn't make any sense. That Vettel could not be complaining about that because it was very clear to see Ocon was on the racing line the entire time. Yeah, I'm going to give Vettel an E.
Yeah, really poor.
Reluctantly give him an E. But it was just shocking.
I know
shocking
people. Look, I know people think that I hate Sebastian Vettel for some reason, which is very odd. His performances last year weren't up to scratch, and this performance was also not up to scratch. And I was ridiculed by quite a few people saying that Stroll would outperform him this season, and I still think that Stroll will beat Vettel over the course of the year. I think that Vettel won't have performances like this. Don't get me wrong. He was very unlucky in qualifying and had a lot of ground to make up in the race, and he made up quite a bit of that up to 14th and was on a strategy was a bit meh, but having things like that where you just crash into the back of Ocon, like that's rookie stuff.
It's not a great way to start the year, is it? When you've just even you could argue it would even been better if he'd just sort of trundled round and had a very safe race and finished 12th than having another sort of high profile error in this new team when we, I'm not going to, I'm bantering about, I predicted this and this. I'm not going to, I will hold my hands up and say, I said that Sebastian Vettel will be reborn, and it couldn't have gone it's only one race, of course, but it couldn't have gone much worse for a first race, could it, at your new team?
No. I mean, he's picked up 5 penalty points this weekend, which from memory is like one of the biggest haul of penalty points in recent years, I think.
7 more over the season and he gets banned.
Yeah,
he's gone.
That's because they're all in one
for
race.
a race,
that's
by
12.
The way, everyone banned for a race, not banned for this for life.
For life.
But for that's obviously 12 months until those 5 points disappear as well. So he's got to be careful.
Best behaviour.
That is crazy. Right, okay. I feel like people are going to think we're really harsh with the E. I'm a little bit closer to a D because just purely taking every circumstance into consideration. I'm not going to give him a D because it doesn't matter because we're giving him a D anyway. But moving on, I feel like we've annoyed people already. Stroll, where did Stroll finish in the end?
10th.
So he got a solitary point.
He got into Q3.
Yeah. I think it was considering that Aston Martin doesn't look particularly good, I think it's a B.
I think a B. I gave him a B. I think he looked like the more assured, Aston Martin driver, really. It was, really good, solid performance in a car that, we said it in our predictions that had a lot of people going, oh, will Aston Martin win a race this year? And they've clearly been, screwed quite a bit from the high rake thing that their car isn't. But yeah,
if you took away the identity of the helmets, you would have said that Vettel was the one that finished in 10th and Stroll was the one that crashed, but it's the other way around. And Vettel also made that mistake into turn 1, didn't he, on old mediums where he let quite a few people through locking up. So we're going to go B. Is that right, Katy? Yeah.
I also went with a B for Stroll. I mean, looking back at the previous podcast, we had a question saying about if Aston Martin were going to make it into Q3, to which we almost assumed that they probably would. But Stroll managed it. Obviously, Vettel didn't. And also, just going to touch on the fact, because loads of people left me a comment of the fact that I said I would love the fact for half of the grid to make it through to Q3, which is obviously how it works. I think I had a bit of
that was a really funny
no,
comment.
neither of us picked up on it.
know.
We were like, yeah, what a silly thing.
Yeah, we got that you meant it was
Charles Leclerc. I am stupid moment, but it's fine. I appreciate everyone sending me messages on Twitter.
Don't worry, it was endearing. Next up, Gasly. I mean, he had such a great qualifying, quite a rookie mistake, to be honest, to just drive into the back of Ricciardo and lose his front wing, in my opinion. Taking everything into consideration, is that a D, do you reckon?
I've gone D.
I was D, almost E.
Because it's such a
race-ending mistake when AlphaTauri, we mentioned it, that car looks amazing. You know, he was amazing in qualifying, and they need to be picking up the points while their car is looking
a monster.
almost the third best, or at least up there with McLaren. They needed a big chunk of points to start the year with, and Gasly, unfortunately, for again, swap the helmets, and that's the kind of thing you'd probably expect Tsunoda to do. So, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. If we're giving Vettel an E, we're giving Gasly an E, in my opinion. Okay, so we'll overthrow Katy's D, unfortunately. Sorry. That sounded weird. That sounded really weird. Tsunoda, I'm going to give him, considering everything, an A.
I went for a B.
Wow. Tsunoda fanboy, first race.
I know.
Playing it cool, you see.
Yeah, there's more to come from him. I think I agree. Yeah. I agree with him that, you know, 9th after the session, I guess it showed the sign of AlphaTauri's confidence that they were trying to get through on the mediums into Q2. Because I mean, Tsunoda, I can't wait till if we get to see him on the soft tires in Q3 on low fuel, because that Q1 run was ridiculous. But I think there was more to come from the result. That's why I gave him a B.
Yeah, okay.
He messed up at the start as well.
More to come. Messed up the start, but I'm thinking, look, you're a debutant. You've never raced in Formula One before.
We just need to give some, you know, leeway for when he wins in Imola, and we give him an A star. So
a triple star. I'm still leaning on A. Okay. I felt like he was driver of the day. So, Katy?
Well, I went with B, so sorry, Matt.
Cool, rip. I think that the fans will be on my side, because if he's getting voted driver of the day, I guarantee they're not voting B.
Was it Perez driver? I thought Perez was driver.
Yeah, Checo was driver of the day.
Oh no, I was watching Tomo's thing. Oh no, he gave him driver of the day. Anyway, Tsunoda was second driver of the day, maybe. I don't know. Anyway, yes, Perez was driver of the day. I stand corrected. Okay, all right, B then, whatever. Alonso obviously retired, but I thought he was very feisty. Looked like the old Fernando in a lot of ways. Does it deserve an A, considering Ocon's performance? Yes, it does.
Yeah, I gave him an A. Just straight back in the car. The Alpine doesn't look very good. And I had quite a few messages after the qualifying. Just how many weird things we kind of predicted in that last podcast that we were joking about. You know, obviously we're all just making it up, but we said, didn't we, Alonso will just somehow be Alonso and pop it into Q3, even though he shouldn't be, because that Alpine doesn't look that great, and the midfield is so competitive, and it's a bit of a shame really, because I think was it a plastic bag or a sandwich bag or something ruined his race. Some Marshall's sandwiches should have listed.
I'm not surprised. That bloody airbox is sucking up probably half the universe with how big it is. So
it's like a black hole.
Yeah, literally.
Oh dear. Well, I went with high B, but I know that's not how it works. So we'll go with A. But yeah, pretty insane quali, amazing fights. Retired because of the plastic bag, as you said. So a DNF, but what a mega comeback. Proper
what a lad.
Amazing.
What a lad. Well done, Alonso. You get an A. Ocon, I am going to give him a D.
Yeah. I'll give him a D. Where did he finish?
Half the points.
13th.
Obviously, he got punted by Vettel.
Yeah.
He did get punted by Vettel. But
disappointing.
C, D, it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's on like, the borderline.
Yeah, like the Alpine isn't great, but you think
I feel a bit
Surely-
harsh. But then he had a terrible quality, but then that was because of C. I'm changing. C.
No, but was it because I heard that he wasn't just on a particularly good run anyway, even with the Mazda?
Yeah, he had a bad first lap, didn't he?
And then just kind of wasn't going quicker. I'm not sure. But the thing is, we gave him the benefit of the doubt last year that, he had a year out the sport. And now I feel like he really needs to step up. And I know Alonso is a ruthless and incredible teammate.
He's 40
but
years
you don't
old.
want to be, you don't want to be 16th or wherever he qualified when Alonso's 8th, ninth, wherever he was. So
he started ninth. Yeah,
when you're the one that's in the team for a year. So, or I think, in terms of like drivers that didn't crash, I'd say this was probably the most disappointing of performances.
Yeah, this isn't giving my prediction a huge amount of a promise, is it? But I've said Ocon C, although it was very average race, hence the C. It's not, as awful as some of the other drivers we've seen. It was undoubtedly a bit of a disappointing performance, considering what Alonso was up to with blimmin' metal plates in his jaw and being away from the sport for 2 years. But I've gone C for Ocon.
Okie doke. I'm sure we'll probably fly through the next 3 teams because they are just the usual ones that we don't know a huge amount of because we don't see them. Raikkonen.
C, solid.
C.
Not like...
Yeah, he was it 12th?
He almost got a point. 11th.
Yeah.
I think 11th. He was 11th and Giovinazzi was 12th, right?
Yeah, so it's a decent I was about to say haul. No haul because they got 0 points, but a decent showing from Alfa Romeo at least that they could definitely get some points if things go wrong for the teams ahead. So Raikkonen C, Giovinazzi C as well then?
Yeah, that's what I got for.
Lovely stuff. Russell, of course, getting into Q2 was very impressive, but and was lingering in the points for all of 3 seconds, even though he hadn't stopped, hoping for a safety car, I'm sure. Should we give Russell a B then for that performance?
Yeah, I thought B. I barely even noticed Williams in the race, at least because
you've deleted them from your brain with the worst livery ever made.
Yeah, they are pixelated in my head, so I just don't see it. Yeah, just barely even, because they were either the team doing decent or a banter team that were doing really poorly. The fact that we have a new challenger for last place. I saw a brilliant meme, by the way. I think it was a clip from Top Gear where they're looking at the screen going, "We're not last," and it was like Williams mechanics pointing at Haas being last. But yeah, I think B for Russell, C for Latifi I've gone for. And again, they just weren't in the race.
Yeah, I think, that's exactly the same marks that I've given them. Really impressed by Russell once again to get through to Q2. We've obviously had lots of discussions on this podcast about the state of the Williams and how it looked like it could be really...
or
Both. Both. But yeah, brilliant job from him. We know that he is superb on a Saturday, isn't he? And getting that Williams where it shouldn't probably really be. But overall... I think we said B for Russell, C for Latifi.
Yeah, agreed with that one. Next up, Mazepin, the quickest F anyone has ever received because it's one of the worst weekends I think anyone's ever had as a debutant, right? Spinning most of the time, of course, coining the now name Mazepin, which is now becoming a meme. But if we're judging purely on his performance, it was dreadful. He looked okay in practice, looked like he was, a bit quicker than Mick Schumacher at times, but generally speaking, crashing on lap 1 on his own, lighting up the rear tyres. I know Schumacher did also spin later on, and that Haas does look like a handful, but come on, you're not risking it into turn 2. You could tell as well, he squeezed the throttle a little bit like we saw in F2 with Piastri, who squeezed the throttle a little bit to try and get up the inside of, maybe it was even one of the Williams of Latifi perhaps. But you just don't need to do that. It's full fuel, 100 kilograms. Don't be taking risks.
I think it's worse that he managed to do it on essentially both his qualifying laps. So if you think about the laps that count, Saturday and Sunday, he didn't do a single one without spinning, which is really poor form. A lot of people, like you say, taking the driving into account. People saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be an F1." And at the end of the day, he finished I can't remember what, 5th in F2 maybe. So we're not talking about, Rag Hunnathan levels of bad, or even they've just put, even if like,
leave Mahavir out of this.
Like, or you know what I mean? Like some like random kid in karts that they've gone, here you go, have an F1 drive. Like, someone finishing 5th in F2 should be able to at least drive and do all right in Formula One. But yeah, just the fact that he spun on both qualifying attempts and then again on the very first, third corner of the race.
10-3.
You can't get any worse for a debut. So yeah,
it just has the hallmarks of desperation to impress, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just overdriving the car, clearly. And
because you think that if you had those two, they're the worst car on the grid, clearly, and you've had your 2 spins in qualifying, you think even if you're letting people go into the first few turns, just let them go, ease into the race. I mean, Jack Aitken with his savage tweet saying, I feel suddenly better about taking 60 laps to bin it in the wall or whatever in Sakir. So yeah, you think take it easy, but to go off immediately, yeah, what a poor debut.
I think we can see very clearly that the Haas does look like an absolute dog to drive. Like for Schumacher to spin as well, like Schumacher's an F2 champion. He's not a poor driver. So that car is obviously not great. But for Mazepin to, he's got a load of people that he has to prove a lot to, not just on the track, but also his actions off the track. And he came across and said, I want you to judge me by my driving. But this obviously is not the greatest start, is it? By binning it off in turn 3. I mean, none of us like to see drivers going off and crashing. And, as much as we might not agree with what he's done away from the racetrack, it's, it's good to see that he was able to walk away from a crash like that and he's fine. But it's just an abysmal debut, really. And yeah, hence why he has got the F.
Indeed, it wasn't a huge crash, was it? But
no,
just seeing a car going off, spearing off in the background, gives you shivers.
At Bahrain,
from what happened.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. It was a bit of a.
It's not a nice remembering of what happened to Grosjean. But fortunately, both of them okay. Mick Schumacher. So we're giving obviously Mazepin an F. Schumacher was, obviously had that spin. It's very difficult to judge. I think we just give him a D and move on, do we?
I gave him a C, but.
Okay,
yeah. But
spinning by himself.
I guess it was.
What else?
He managed to finish the race.
I'm trying to think.
I think that's a D grade, isn't it? If you manage to finish the race.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. Like, what did we give?
This is
Jack
me, by the way.
Sakir?
This is me.
Oh yeah, I know.
I'm a Schumacher fan. Every percent of every molecule of me. And I'm saying a D, and you're here it's dropping a C. I mean, look, I don't think it
was worse as like a worse mistake to make as
like Gasly, for example.
Yeah.
But Gasly we gave an E, didn't we?
But the thing is, Ocon, we gave him a D. But
let's decide, Katie. What were you going for?
On my thing, I have a C.
Okay, C it is. Done. We're done.
Okay.
Let's not linger.
Yes, minus.
Don't you dare. Right, predictions for Bahrain. Let's go through these atrocities. Perez within 0.2 of Verstappen in Q3. I went for as my first one. That's really good, considering Perez didn't even make Q3. That's just my hopeful, wishful thinking that the second Red Bull driver seat isn't cursed. And the second one, Ricciardo, best of the rest. Also absolute rubbish. Tommy.
Verstappen pole. Which he did,
well
and no DNFs in the race, which ended in 3 seconds.
Katie?
I went for top 5 finish for an AlphaTauri, and I specified Gasly, and then he went and ruined everything, so thanks, Pierre. And Bottas finishing ahead of Hamilton. So Matt
Tommy
and I, we are the
none.
Alpine of the predictions, no points.
Wow, ouch. Fans, Messi Lusada, double DNF for Red Bull, 1-2 finish for Mercedes. No. CG Zinzu, double Williams point finish. No. Westy 2209, Alonso podium with Ocon and P4. Absolutely not. Lovely stuff. Now the predictions for the Formula One Pirelli Gran Premio del Med in Italy, Il dell'Emilia Romagna.
You're welcome for that.
I thought I'd just read it. I'm Ron Burgundy. my two predictions: Verstappen on pole by over 0.3 of a second, or 0.3 and above, not over. So if it is 0.3 exactly, that counts.
I love you. You always banter about our prediction, and you've just gone. So same qualifying result as last week.
Excuse me.
Oh, Tommy.
Get out of here.
Tommy's like, oh, my internet's got to go.
I'm supporting your boy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Tommy, final thoughts? Oh, no, you haven't frozen yet. Good, nice. I like that. So Verstappen on pole by 0.3. Look, I'm specific. I don't just go Verstappen pole. At least I add another variable in there.
Yeah.
I'm not boring like you. And Vettel out-qualified by Stroll again. Tommy.
AlphaTauri quickest of the midfield. And so quicker than Mclaren. And all
1 point. Well done.
Yeah. You never know. Perez podium.
I've gone for Perez out-qualifying Bottas and double points for Ferrari again.
Cool.
Nice.
All right. Sounds good. The fans, Kadati says both Alphas in the points like the last time we visited Imola. Nosy Bear 21. Sonoda on the podium. Lars Gers. Max dominates everything, but Lewis still wins. That is very possible. Right. That's it. Tommy, final thoughts.
Nice.
Yeah. Final thoughts. Just enjoy the race. I know we had a moan about track limits, but do try and enjoy it because we've finally got what we wanted. Looks like we're getting a title fight. We said be hyped, and well, the race delivered. So, what a shame we've got to wait 3 weeks, though.
It's a long, long time. Yeah. Am I doing my final thoughts?
Yeah.
Okay. Try and bottle the feelings that you all felt after the race had ended and that excitement and channel that throughout the rest of the season rather than looking back at what they're called turn 4 flashbacks. Yeah, just get rid of that. Get that negative energy, throw it away. Remember the good feelings that we felt after that race because that was a corker. And I'm very excited for Imola, except we probably won't get as an exciting race, but maybe I'm going to reverse jinx it. Who knows?
Well, you said it now. No jinxes happen when you say.
Oh, is that the rules?
Yeah, it just doesn't.
Sorry, everyone.
Of course, Tommy's looking forward to Imola. It's basically a Monaco, so he'll be absolutely loving the procession. It should be great. My final thoughts are what an amazing race that we've just had on Sunday. A huge amount of time now till the next one, but we will have lots of Formula One content coming your way, including actually this podcast going out at the same time as another video. It's a double video day today, talking about the track limits as well that we've discussed and why it was possible that Lewis could extend 29 times and get away with it. Right, that's it. Thank you so much to our sponsors, LinkedIn Talent Solutions, and we will see you very soon. Hashtag WTF1 podcast. If you want to get involved next time, give us a thumbs up, 5 stars, wherever you are. Lots of love. Thank you, Tommy, and to Katy, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Tommy, get some furniture for Christ's sake. Get something. Get a picture. Stop pretending that you've frozen.